this woman's 30 years, I think 31 years at Boeing. She has had this steady rise, building the credibility and the confidence in the community that we have just heard from our two last speakers, Rupa and Penny. Kara, I'm handing it right over to you to welcome and introduce your power panel, and we're going to find the fit, discovering the next cloud leadership role for the participants today. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate it. Can you all hear me? Yes. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I'm excited about this because, I definitely have a direct connection with cloud. And so to talk about one of the key roles that we have is amazing. So I'm Kara South, and I'm a senior manager at Boeing. Specifically in the application management as a service. So we are modernizing our applications and taking them to cloud. So it's always said that if you can modernize applications or work on something in Boeing, it definitely is challenging to do, and it definitely will be able to make a difference. So I wanted to introduce myself and also our esteemed panel here. And so we've got, let's see, Marian and Neera. There we go. Joy, there we go. And Sonia and Joy. Great. Okay, we've got everybody. Excellent. So what we want to do is spend just 2 or 3 minutes each to kick this off. Introduce yourselves, and while you're doing your introduction, also answer, what does cloud leadership role look like within the company? And the reason why we're doing this topic is today it seems as though cloud is everything. Gartner says more than half of enterprise IT spending in key market segments will shift to the cloud by 2025. One of the most rapidly in-demand positions in this field is the cloud product manager role. And all of us know, if you look at for those of us that have been in IT for years, when we started to work in the cloud fields and analytics and everything else that came in, that literally snapshot IT again. Everybody had to learn all this, right? And so all of a sudden we're on a even playing field in a sense. So maybe in the past, learning all the deep dive IT skills that maybe some of our male allied counterparts were learning, now it's everybody had to learn all of the new things. And so that's been interesting to see how we've resnapped IT about 10 years ago. So this is where we're going to focus on, is the product manager role. So let's do introductions, and what does cloud leadership role look like within your company? And then we'll definitely then go through some questions that we have for our panel. So Sonia, why don't we start with you? Have an introduction, and then what does this mean to you for the cloud roles?
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you, everyone. And hello, good afternoon. And I'm guessing if there are folks in other time zones, good evening, or yeah. So my introduction in terms of my professional, background, I have been working with Microsoft for about 7 years. And before Microsoft, I've been very much part of the online world when I was building out learning and training solutions in, called e-learning, which was supposed to be very new at the time. But in Microsoft, I had a product management kind of a role where I was responsible for, building out their documentation platform and some products on it. Then I moved on to, I made myself familiar with Azure, more familiar with the Azure as Microsoft was building out those worlds. And now I am working for engineering team, which is essentially responsible for Microsoft's customer experience at different touch points in the customer journey. And my role is that of a senior director of business management / also known as a chief of staff role. And to me, cloud leadership, the way I think of it, it is not just about building your expertise on cloud technologies or moving from on-prem to the cloud, but the way I think of cloud leadership roles and, leaders are the ones who lead from the perspective of technology, people, culture, business, as well as processes. So that's what, it's a whole encompassing definition of cloud leadership in my mind and the way my company also sees it.
Excellent. Thank you, Sonia. Joey, when we go to you, introduction, and then what does cloud leadership role look like within your company?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Joy Levine Wynn, and I am a director of cloud specialty sales, solutions, and success at Insight. Insight is a global solutions integrator. I spent a lot of time at Microsoft prior to coming to Insight, but my role here really is about helping our clients succeed with cloud. And the three clouds that I'm responsible for today are obviously the three main cloud partner hyperscalers: Microsoft, AWS, and Google. And I would say that Insight and we're part of our product management, which is really a partner organization. That's really how Insight thinks about it. And so I would say that from a cloud leadership position at Insight, we have a couple of ways to think about it. So from a product management, which I know this was the topic, that really means that we would work with our cloud partners. We'd actually set a strategy for how we're going to go to market with this cloud partner. And then we create a sales enablement and execution strategy. And then we work across groups throughout our organization to help get that execution accomplished. And so the other way to think about cloud leadership at Insight is that you could also be a leader in our consulting services organization, in our managed services organization, or be part of this partner management organization as well.
Great. Thank you, Joy.
Sure.
Neri, are you there? Okay. How about Marion?
Hi, everybody. My name is Marion Breeze. I'm here with Archive 360. And Archive 360 started as a small data migration company. We were very focused on a very specific need that companies had to move away from legacy email archiving to the cloud. And we transitioned when we saw new opportunities in managing data estates for companies in a very different way, and ended up developing a platform natively built on the Microsoft Azure platform for customers to be able to better manage their data in the cloud. And it's interesting to talk about project management in particular, because traditionally, when I started in project management a long time ago, for a much smaller company, project management was schedule and budget. That's what you focused on. And that was what we were trained in for project management. And the approach that I see now, and particularly at Archive 360, but at other companies as well, is that project management takes a broader view in a lot of ways. So we're not just looking at the specific tasks that we have on hand for a particular project, but we're actually looking at it in the context of how it affects other things within that organization, how it affects other people's jobs, how it affects other workloads that customers may be doing. And for me, from a, what does cloud leadership mean to me? I think about this a lot, both as a mentor and as a mentee. I think it really means having a seat at the table. And something that struck me was at the beginning of the session today was Chaitra mentioned that there's a 66% increase in ROI for when women are brought to the executive team. I think that is an incredible statistic, and one that I hope all of us can share broadly and bring those seats to others at the table as well.
Great. Thank you, Marion. Nira, there you are. Hello. Welcome. So let's do Q. Oh, she's on mute. We can't hear you. Hold on a second. Can we unmute Nira? All right, stand by, Nira. We still can't hear you. Oh, she disappeared. Okay. All right. So let's go to a couple questions, and this will start expanding some of our experiences with this. So Marion, here's a question for you. What are the blockers you may face to secure those positions within the companies?
So I think there's some key blockers that that I've experienced and that I've talked to other colleagues. One is there are assumptions about your skills. And I think we've all experienced that, whether when we walk into a room and somebody assumes that we're an assistant or that we're not in a senior leadership role, or if it's more in social connections that we have on LinkedIn. I think that there's a lot of assumptions about our skills based on, how we look or where we're from. And so I think that addressing those assumptions is really important. And I think that one of the ways we can do that is by very simple things like keeping LinkedIn current. But another way to do it is, and this is something that somebody else coached me on, was if you feel, if you're not too sure or feel a little out of your league coming into a meeting, or if you're naturally an introvert, identify somebody ahead of time who may be an ally for you in that upcoming meeting or in that upcoming presentation or in a document that you're preparing, and use that allyship to help you address that blocker and also to be able to present in ways that you feel more comfortable.
Excellent. Okay, let's go back to Neera. Let's see if we can hear Neera and have an introduction. And Neera, one of the questions that we were asking in our introduction is, what does cloud leadership role look like in your company? So let's see if we can unblock or unmute you here. Nope. All right, let's try one more time. Can we unmute Neera, please? No. All right, we'll keep working on that. All right, Joy, we move to you next. Here's a question for you. What are the strategies that you have used in your career to unlock barriers to take on leadership roles for digital transformation projects?
Sure. I mean, one of the things, and all of the women here have said, great advice, and I'm sure you'll start to hear some common themes, but, for me personally, a lot of it was building consensus across multiple groups. So when it comes to cloud specifically, you're working across all groups, right? It's the IT group, right? It's technology. It could be services. It could be sales. It could be finance. It could be HR. It could be all of those like business functions. And for me, it was building relationships across all of those, knowing that when it comes to cloud, it's going to be pervasive, around the company. And so when I took these jobs and other jobs I've had in the past, it was really getting those relationships built, because those are the people you're going to have to work with to get things done. And it's not always within your own group. It's often cross group, and being able to collaborate with these folks and make sure they understand what's in it for them. Often I've had people ask me for help, and, I call it it's enough about you, let's talk about me syndrome, right? And, I'm always wondering, well, why am I here and what's in it for me? And so I'm always very clear when I'm working across groups to make sure they understand what's in it for them if I'm asking for help to get something done. And so while that was more general, breaking down barriers than it is for cloud, that's one of the things I've done. The other things I would suggest are take some risks. I started the cloud, what we call cloud success, not client success, but cloud success, or within Insight. And I did that, it was not something that we had thought about, because typically it had been done by, the manufacturers, like the partners, that make a product, where we are more of a reseller, integrator, solutions integrator. But I started small. I built the consensus, like I said, across groups. And then now our team went from 2 people, we have now 30, and we also have an offshore team, and we go across all 3 of our clouds. But I had to take a risk. I had to build that consensus, and then recognize that the strategy I started with actually didn't work the first time around. And so I failed fast, and make sure you fail fast. And then I quickly, shifted gears and actually was able to build out that team. We can actually now attribute our team's success to the fact that we've actually increased cloud consumption for our clients by more than 10% every single time we get involved. And we've increased our client satisfaction as well, and by several basis points as we consider that. So, those are my advices in terms of leadership, and, if it helps from cloud or even in general.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy. Sure. All right, Neera, we're going to do it one more time. Can we unmute Neera and have an introduction? Is it going to work? Nope. Okay. Technology. Wonderful. All right. Sonia, you're up next. Here's your question. What were the steps you took to achieve your current? Step me through it.
Right. So at a high level, I would say, the typical steps that one does take when one's looking for a new role. Firstly, of course, I am a networker by nature. So I networked to find the right kind of opportunities. Once I knew those opportunities, knew of some opportunities, it was very important to me at that stage of my career to make sure that, the vision of the organization, the leader, the team I work for resonates with me, especially in terms of the digital transformation journey that our company, our team was going through at that point of time. And thirdly, figuring out the gaps from my skills or, my experiences. And as a woman, it's always hard for us. We always want to be maybe at 100% of what a role or a job description requires. But, I knew that that's not going to happen. So I had to be out there, be bold, try and fill those gaps. And that's where a major number of steps came in, because obviously there were gaps in what my skill set so far was. So thinking back on what I said a while back about, digital transformation or cloud leadership is about people, it's about process, it's about technology. I put in efforts as I started preparing for the new roles and interviewing for roles, etc. I put in efforts into pretty much all these areas, and to see how my kind of role, a business operations role, aligns in these areas and what sort of learning I need to have and education I need to have. So for example, on the technology side, I went and took a couple of Azure certifications. I learned more about the market, AWS versus Azure versus Google Cloud versus Oracle that was coming up at that point of time. I wanted to educate myself very much on, data was a huge thing in the entire cloud digital transformation world. Wanted to educate myself on data platforms as well as product telemetry that comes in. And I was familiar with products. I developed conventional, traditional products, but how do you use and evaluate the health of your products with the help of all your data platforms at telemetry? I wasn't familiar with. So I learned about some of that. Then looking at process and operations, my experience with working with a capacity management team in the cloud organization at Microsoft was super helpful, because I knew and learned how things work at a back end from a process perspective, from day to day, or rather moment to moment management of cloud capacity in that online world. So that education, that experience was super helpful. Then thirdly, I would say from a people and a culture and a product mindset perspective, it is a completely different mindset when you are in the cloud world, as opposed to, when we were developing those traditional products, which had once in 3 year kind of a release versus a constant change. Yeah, so that mindset change and moving away from too much of a huge vendor footprint where we had too much of a reliance on a very tactical basis with what vendors were owning versus what our full-time employees were owning. Because I, in my role, was responsible and still am responsible for transitioning key things from a vendor footprint to a full-time employee footprint. So those were all areas that I educated myself on. And education is always a mix of, learning, reading, doing, and mentoring. I found a couple of awesome mentors who were able to help me with all this learning. And, and then, of course, when finally I took on the role, and there was a ton of on-the-job learning, and that continues till date.
Excellent. All right. Neera, we want to hear from you. And we're going to see if the unmute buttons works at this point.
Maybe you want to type something, Neera?
Yeah, there you go. Why don't you type? We at least hear from you. All right, we're going to go to the audience now. So you can either speak up, I believe that's how this works, or you can go in the chat, probably what the audience can do. Your question is this, please share with us. What strategies are you using today to position yourself for cloud leadership roles? So what strategies are you using today to position yourself for cloud leadership roles? And it would be great to hear from you guys in the chat. Or our panelists can also answer that one.
I'll take a stab at that if that's okay. So I've had kind of an interesting journey working in the nonprofit world initially, and transitioning from that into I ended up doing a lot of writing, which led to a writing opportunity to create a report for Brad Smith, who at the time was the chief legal officer at Microsoft. I was able to then take that and happened to talk to some friends who were starting a company, which was at the time Archive 360, and took every opportunity that I could from a startup perspective. So it wasn't just doing what I was hired to do, but also looking for where there were gaps and finding ways to fill those gaps. And it gave me so many opportunities to try things that I had never done before. I also was very lucky that I had some terrific mentors along the way. But I think that a lot of, for me, for my career and for some of my colleagues, it really has been about taking a chance, taking opportunities that you might not necessarily feel comfortable with or know a lot about. And now just recently I've transitioned from a role in sales to a role as head of customer success. And it's a new program at Archive 360, formalized. It used to be sort of an informal thing. And I'm really excited about it. I'm also a little bit nervous, I'll be honest. But I'm identifying in LinkedIn and other networks, people who have done this before me, and leveraging those relationships and those networks to make sure that I can bring not just my own experiences at Archive 360, but the hard lessons that have been learned by others, and bring those to bear as well. So I think going outside my comfort zone is a great adventure, and certainly there are some challenges, but I'm really excited about it, and it keeps your career and life a lot more interesting when you do take those chances.
Excellent. Thank you, Marion. So the other part about a successful cloud career, and what we're finding is that not only is it the leadership skills and definitely the technical skills, but the business skills. And so it's been fascinating to work with many different companies that are literally through this transformation of going from our legacy world of our applications and our IT experiences to our new cloud world, or our journey, let's just call it that, for the last 8-10 years. And so whenever you're looking at the business side of things, you're going from CapEx and OpEx experiences. Now, all of a sudden, you're going from your legacy world of not really knowing how much you're really paying for IT or infrastructure costs to now you have full itemized billing each month, and you actually know exactly what you're using in cloud. And so for companies, that is definitely a new experience for some areas. Maybe the older companies are experiencing a little bit more of that transition. So that's been interesting also, to look at the roles of how that's changing and what skills you have to bring to the table to be able to be successful in the cloud roles. So with that in mind, we've got just 4 minutes left. So we wanted to make sure that any best practices or tips that the panel would like to share, we've got just 4 minutes, so probably one of you or maybe two we might be able to fit in. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us regarding the cloud leadership roles?
Yeah, I would say that I think you'll hear a common theme, but mentoring and networking is huge. Especially as you're building your career, and, Marion just said it great, like she's embarking on something new and wants to reach out and learn. But I would also say, from a skills perspective, it doesn't have to be about a role skill that you're just not strong at. Get mentored on that skill, right? Depending on what that is. And one of the things, Kara, you mentioned is the financial piece to that. The buzzword of the day now is FinOps, and DevOps, now FinOps. Look into that. You be aware that there's new things, especially it relates to cloud. And, I didn't really understand what FinOps was, and I ended up becoming certified as a practitioner, and my team is as well. And, that really helps that conversation when it comes to cloud, because costs, and billing and all of the fun things that come along with it, we had to learn how to help and consult with our clients on that. But I would say that finding good mentors and networking is really half the battle, because people hire people they know or referrals from people they know. And so as you're thinking about, your career, that's always an investment that you should be making.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy.
I'd like to add one other perspective here, and I think it's related to something you said a while back, that it's not just about technology skills, it's about a lot of other skills. I'd encourage folks to look at your current skill set and see, evaluate, talk to mentors about where you could use that. An example in my own world is, people that have great writing skills, for example. they could come into the cloud world and tell stories, because storytelling, especially success stories in the cloud world, success stories of digital transformation, is so important. And there is such a hunger out there for those stories because customers want to understand the real world. So if you have great writing skills, you are able to absorb tons of information, understand, sift through it, talk to product managers, and craft a story. As a writer, you are successful in a cloud world.
Exactly. All right, Neera, can we hear from you? Are we able to unmute Neera real quick before we run out of time here? 1 minute. All right. Well, we'd love to hear you one day. All right, Marion, is there any other parting thoughts that you've got? Any best practices, tips, or resources you'd like to share this last minute?
I just put a few things in the chat. I think I actually have a coach who has reached out to me recently through a network, through a friend of a friend, and she has also offered to do mentoring and coaching for others as well. So please feel free to reach out to me. I can't wait to talk to Joy and Sonia and some of the other people on this panel and have some more informal conversations after today's panel, just to learn from all of you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to have these conversations.
Excellent. And it looks like Neera did get a chance to actually communicate in chat. So I hope that everybody gets to look through there so we can at least hear from Neera. I appreciate that. And so thank you so much for our panel. Just an amazing group of women. So thank you so much for sharing your insights in this topic. And then also we want to make sure that, this cloud world is definitely something to get engaged in, but also to really find those new roles. And just like what the panelists have mentioned, take some of those risks, go learn something new, and literally go out. And there's so many different aspects of cloud that you can get involved in. So it's definitely a new world. So it's excellent. All right, Nancy, it's up to you to keep going here. So thank you so much for all
Sarah,
your
you are
excitement.
awesome. You took the words right out of my mouth. I love this panel. Thank you. Great job. And how great was that chat room? Thank you very much, Neera. And Joy, I loved your fail fast, pivot, build a team. Right? And Sonia, expand that network. And Marion, you, I loved how you built on our last panel, our last speaker, to make sure that everybody is included. And you threw in Neera's LinkedIn in the chat, and and your last contribution in the chat. When we have the opportunity to network, we get more than we give. That is just 100%. I love that. My heartfelt thanks to you all. That was really great. Really, really great. Now that you have